The Georgia Bulldogs may have upset Buffalo over the weekend, but end zone host Bill Shanks says they still could have played a little bit better. Of course he does.
From the biggest Bulldogs fan ever. That makes a lot of sense. Here's Bill with this week's BS report.
The Georgia Bulldogs won on Saturday by 22 points. That should be something that should make all Georgia fans pretty excited. It was a season opener, and it was a big deal to open the season with a victory. But for some reason, I think many Georgia fans are left feeling a little empty about that first game. Now, sure, they had a lot of people hurt. They had a lot of people suspended. But still, it's just not the way you want to see your team come out and play against Buffalo, the Buffalo Bulls, a team that in the last 3 years has won a total of 10 games. Georgia looked flat, and surprisingly, that's the same way they looked last year when they started the season against Boise State. Now, Boise State was a very good team. They may have made Georgia look kind of flat in week 1 last year, but Buffalo this year, they were no Boise State. They were not a very good team, but yet they did some damage against Georgia, particularly against that Georgia defense. Now, when you think about that game, you say, well, let's just shake it off and go to week 2, and maybe it won't be a big deal. Maybe it's just Georgia starting off slow, and maybe you have the excuse of all those players being suspended and being hurt. Sure, that happens to a lot of teams in week 1. It happened to Florida last week. It happened to South Carolina last week. They didn't play their best games in week 1. But you have to now turn to week 2 for Georgia, and they go to play Missouri. First game ever for Missouri in the SEC. It's going to be a huge crowd. They're going to have new uniforms. They've got a big-time new player in Dorial Green-Beckham. This is going to be a challenge for Georgia, and I really don't think they can do it. They still have a lot of people hurt. We don't know yet if Malcolm Mitchell will play at cornerback. He's got a problem with his ankle. We don't know about Marlon Brown, whether he'll play or not. And he is, of course, a big-time wide receiver that they really need to come through for them this year. They've got questions on the offensive line with John Theus, who had an ankle problem. Also, Watts Dansler, a backup offensive lineman, who had an ankle problem. Will these guys be healthy to play? And then you've got the suspended players. 4 guys on defense who could be suspended or will be suspended, even though they're trying not to tell anybody, for this week's game against Missouri. Now, Georgia needs to play well, whether they have these guys on the team and on the roster and on the field or not, because they're supposed to be a big-time program. They're supposed to be a top 10 program. They're supposed to be an SEC contender this year. So if they go out there and wet the bed against Missouri, people are going to wonder, is this yet another season where it's going to be a lot of unfulfilled expectations for the Georgia Bulldogs? And if they go out there looking flat like they did last week against Buffalo at home, yes, the fingers are going to be pointed at Mark Richt. Now, I've never been much of a Mark Richt fan. I just think he's been a long time here, 12 years, and they should be doing a little bit more. But this is a very big challenge for Mark Richt. Yes, his team is good and talented, but last week they looked mediocre. And this fan base is getting tired of mediocre football. And yes, 10 wins in the SEC is mediocre. Why can Alabama go and replace all those guys who went in the NFL and beat Michigan 41-14, and yet Georgia had trouble beating Buffalo by only 22? That's why this week's game against Missouri is important, and right now, I don't think Georgia can win it.